Wow.
I went into this party. Suddenly they had M&M coming in and
What?
rapping. And it's sponsored by the startup, mind you. So I rocked up to the founder. I said, hey, what's going on? They said, I'm networking. I said, what the fuck? I mean, you're the e-commerce company, right? You're selling jeans and shirt to auntie and uncles. Why are you networking?
Hi everyone, and welcome to our brand new podcast, Hatch and Hustle, where we talk about everything startups, entrepreneurship, and share some of our craziest experiences.
Hi everyone, I'm Bennett. I'm an investment banker turned VC partner. I've got 15 years of financial experience, analyzed 5,000 over companies, and currently working at Velocity Ventures.
Hi everyone, my name is Denise. I'm also known as SuperCatK on the internet, and I have been a full-time live streamer for the last 3 years, but I've also built startups in Singapore and in New York.
Hello, I'm Brian. I'm also known online as the Invisible Boss. I started a few media companies, Smart Local, Masha News, Eatbook, Zula, and so on.
Hi everyone, I'm Vanessa Ho. I'm currently working in a Web3 startup called Soko, and I also started an angel network called NUS Alumni Ventures. And a bit like Denise, I'm also a content creator.
So honestly, we're a really interesting group of people to gather together to do this.
How did this happen?
Yeah, I know. Right? So, I think it's just purely out of our interest and our experiences in building businesses and startups and wanting to share that with more people.
No, I think if you look at the various founders that have come through, it's really quite the highs are highs, the lows are lows. So I think, being a platform to kind of share their stories, the winners, the success, the failures, the betrayals,
All of it.
all of that,
Unfiltered.
unfiltered.
I'm a fan of a lot of podcasts from the Western world, and I always thought that it would be amazing if Singapore entrepreneurs could also have something similar in Singapore, where you would have Singapore entrepreneurs share the unfiltered stories directly to viewers. And I don't think there's such a platform at the moment which does this well. And this is our attempt to try and create such a platform.
Yeah, it's great to have all these candid conversations while learning business lessons as well from business leaders across Asia, and also discuss entrepreneurship and culture within it as well.
So throughout this entire series, you're going to hear from different entrepreneurs, business people, and learn really about what it means to run your own business. So for today's episode, we are going to be talking a little bit more about how to start your own business in Singapore. And I've been part of startups before I actually built my own, which is the one that I'm currently running. But how about all of you? I mean, you guys have way more experience than I do in starting your own businesses.
So let's talk about why people should even bother thinking about starting their own business. What are the benefits? Because there are obviously a lot of challenges, but what can we get out of starting our own business and being our own boss?
I think a big part of this is the pursuit of freedom. So obviously, obviously you've got to kind of front load all the pain. And you see hustle and all the hustle debt, but eventually you'll be able to get success. You'll be able to live the life you want and empower your loved ones, your family, your friends, and eventually the community. So I think that's in itself very empowering.
Yeah, I think just to be in the position to have a platform to then help other people, whether it's people you know or people you don't know, I think that's what I dream of the most. Just having that opportunity to either that financial freedom or that social freedom to just help, and you don't have to worry about anything else. I don't
Basically,
have to
be in a position that you can make changes and impact that feels important to you.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to the pursuit of freedom, it also applies to your capabilities, because whenever you join a company, you are sort of given a ceiling in terms of the possible growth that you could have. And this could not be the company's fault, it could not be the industry's fault. It could just be because of the way things are set up, right? That's the dynamic of employee-employer company relationship. Now, if you start up your own company, everything is completely different, right? You do not have a ceiling, a skill ceiling anymore. No, yet you do not have a salary ceiling anymore. And your progression then becomes a lot more possible.
It's all in your hands. Whether you do really well or you do poorly, it's entirely on you.
Yeah, and you know how all these motivational speakers are always asking you what wakes you up in the morning, right? And I feel like being an entrepreneur gives you the freedom also and the platform to basically work for your own dream and achieve your own goals instead of working for someone else's dream. If you want to work 18 hours a day, you might as well put that into achieving what you really want than fulfilling someone's dreams that you might not have 100% conviction on. So I think that is itself is very empowering.
So what skills do you need to start a company?
Well, I think firstly for me it's about resilience. The business plan will never come true. I think Denise and Brian can speak for itself, but having challenges come your way, be able to handle them as it comes, and to be able to react positively to it.
Aside from all of the different skills, like, how to code on Excel or in the stuff like that, I think one of the biggest things you need to have as an entrepreneur is discipline. Because like what we just said, whether your company moves forward or not is entirely up to you. Whether your people get paid is entirely up to you. Like, no one said.
KPIs and deadlines for you. You have to keep going, be on track.
Yeah. There's so many days where I just kind of want to sit and I'm like, maybe I should just, take a month off. Let's go to Bali and chill out. And then the next day I'm like, that's never happening because I gotta make sure that my people are taken care of. And I guess naturally with that hunger to want to keep improving, you just always want to keep building more and more and more things. So discipline is a really good skill to have, whether you're an entrepreneur or also just a worker.
There's a quote I like a lot. It's, if you don't work hard enough for your own dream, you end up working for someone else's dream.
Yeah.
True enough.
I think an important skill set would be to be a fast learner, because especially at a very early stage when you don't really have a team yet, you really have to be a jack of all trades, and you have to really pick up everything. Like, how do you do payroll? How do you understand product? How do you raise funds? You have to know enough of everything, unless of course you can find the right people as you go along and scale your business. So being a fast learner, being very adaptable and open-minded to learn new skills as you go along. Because most people are probably either a more business-oriented person or a more technical person. And you just have to pick up the other skill and just be good enough such that when you hire people, you can attract the right talents, you can vet their work, you're not gonna get bullshit by some developers or anything, right? So just be good enough in everything. I think that's quite important.
So do you think that entrepreneurs need to be a jack of all trades, or do you think it's always better to be specialized, super specialized in one thing?
I think to some extent, especially when your company grows from 0 to 10 employees, you've got to be the person that buy the paper clip. You've got to be your own accountant.
Yeah.
You've got to be your own marketing guy.
You've got to know where the coffee is.
Exactly. But I think as you grow and the company grows from 10 to 100 to 1,000 people, you got to kind of move yourself from the execution level to more of a strategy level.
Yeah.
And I realized that founders a lot of times can't elevate themselves from execution to strategic thinking. And it's very tough. Imagine
It's a big jump.
It is,
Yeah.
right? You're saying that I'm planning this big strategy and you're going to China, and next moment you're buying paper clips.
And you're not optimizing your time, right? Which is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
I think it's very important for entrepreneurs to develop core skills, and these core skills have to be very high in certain areas. One of the main issues when it comes to entrepreneurship is people management, right? Because you cannot build a company by yourself. It's impossible. You have to learn how to work very well with people, right? And so that becomes one thing. And you have to know how to manage up and manage down. Manage up, meaning that if you have stakeholders and investors, you talk to them very differently than talk to subordinates, for example.
Sure.
And apart from management skills, product knowledge also you have to be a subject matter expert in whatever your product is, right? You have to be absolutely nailing it, crushing it, whether it's Web3 or crypto or whatever. And I think the final skill to have as a very good core skill would be judgment ability. So this is, they say you should hire your first 100 employees. And I agree with that. I think you should, because, and that will also teach you how to gauge, perception, how to go and judge
What you're
things
looking out for.
What you're looking out for, but also you are going to enter many decisions in the future where you have to make a judgment call. And it's not going to be easy because the information is very unclear. And you have to really look at all these patterns, which you would, a lot of people say that you go with your gut. And actually what going with your gut is you are following your subconscious patterns that you really understand. You just haven't really articulated it to yourself yet.
Yeah.
So you have to go and develop this instinct within you. And then this judgment thing becomes a core skill that will follow you in all the decisions that you make.
But how exactly do you train this instinct? Is it through experiences and having good advisors?
I
just try to
it's trial and error, experiencing and just sometimes you get it wrong, right? And then you will learn from that, and then it strengthens that gut instinct.
It's like dating a bit. Right? you did somebody, then you think, okay, maybe not for you.
Well, I say it's the iteration aspect, right?
Yeah.
As this one bad, not so good. Maybe this one better, right?
Yeah, sure.
What's the difference between them? So it's iteration. I feel that a lot of people they tend to do replication a lot, so they just go and date another person,
Yeah, that's right.
and they might date the same person,
Type,
the same type, right? They know they're already doing it,
Yeah,
you know, and they
asking
still
for
do it.
trouble only.
They still do it anyway.
Yeah.
So I feel a lot of people, maybe they should iterate more than they replicate, like, because you cannot learn from replication. You don't learn much. Some people, they end up in the same job for 10 years and they say they have 10 years of experience, but really they have 10 years of experience doing the 1 year worth of same job.
How do you spot people who have that knack for entrepreneurship?
Well, I think it's a question of, does it come naturally to you or can you learn it? Nature versus nature.
Nurture, yeah.
Can it
Right.
be learned, right?
Yeah, so
Entrepreneurship.
my view is that you can learn most of it. Some personality traits are harder to learn. So for example, entrepreneurial instinct, whether or not are you an extrovert or you're an introvert, do you have enough risk appetite to take on the venture? I think it's a bit harder to learn. Those are easier to learn, are more technical stuff like financial accounting, marketing, sales. I think those you can learn with time. What about you guys?
I think a certain portion of skills can be learned. For example, there have been people who have been doing all these ChatGPT experiments, act as an entrepreneur, build a business for me, my budget is $500. And they actually formulate a pretty decent plan because it's all basically learned. It's trained on the language models around the world, right, essentially. And it has this huge database to draw on, right? So that is, I guess, knowledge can be learned. But what is a bit difficult is maybe, some people are born different, right? They have different qualities, different temperament that they are born in. So for example, if your mom is carrying you in her womb and she experiences stress, your amygdala gets produced in a more heightened form, which makes you more sensitive to stress. And that affects your tolerance. So it's not actually someone's, tolerance towards stress themselves. It's a genetic thing already.
Wow.
And that's why
Wait, I never knew you had this medical side of you. Doctor, right? True.
it's just watching videos.
No, but this is new to me, man.
So there's a huge part which is actually nature, I feel.
Yes.
But of course, everything else can be trained, can be nurtured, especially if you end up in the right environment, you have good methods and so on, you end up getting, it's possible in some cases.
But I need to stop there and ask you, so when your wife was expecting, did you give her the right environment and be like, I'm going to make the next super baby, next Elon Musk? Is that doing
Genius.
coaching while your wife's pregnant and give her the right environment, the right food to optimize the chances of being the next unicorn founder as a kid?
Well, when my wife
Why
had,
you're watching all these YouTube videos for parenting tips?
when she had food cravings, let's just say I just satisfied all her food cravings,
Yes.
She wanted to eat this thing at 2 a.m. Okay, let me drive you there. Let's go and eat this thing at 2 a.m. Okay, this is your 5th meal for the day. It's okay. Just keep her happy.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yes.
So
Happy kid means next unicorn founder.
I think
Maybe.
the environment is extremely important for children, that they grow up in a very positive environment. Like within the woman, outside of the woman as well.
Better take notes from
Yeah.
Ryan.
No, but it's also how your parents tell you certain things, right?
Yeah.
Like from young, they will say, hey, play it safe, play it safe.
That's true.
Then you also naturally like, okay, I shouldn't really be crossing the road while there's no one, driving.
Take the path with least resistance.
Yeah.
But it can all be unlearned and relearned, really.
Yeah.
So whatever, our parents used to teach us came from their time, which was very different compared to our time, digital and all that sort of stuff. But I've seen a lot of people really grow and become very different people just because they have that desire to, really want to build their own things.
No.
It's definitely possible. There's definitely a lot of hope for anyone who wants to, build their own business.
For sure, man.
So, should you start a company?
Well, there's this thing I always do in events, especially, Van would know, but those drinks and networking event, there are hundreds of founders there. But eventually, towards later part of the night, when people have a few drinks, I always come out and say, why do you do this? What's your purpose of it?
Oh my gosh, you're evil.
No,
that's
but
the trick.
understanding the why is important, right?
Spot on. So I think there are a wide range of reasons, right? Saying that I want to build the best product out there. There's a business opportunity that I capture. I like to be financially rewarded, which is all fine. But I realized that these purpose don't go the full yard. Those that go the full yard are actually purpose that is bigger than themselves. So I spoke to an entrepreneur. I said, hey, why do you want to do this? And she said that I've got 2 sons. I want to prove that if Papa can do this and determined enough, they can also be successful. Yeah. So can you imagine, will you give up that easily looking at your kids? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So I think people got to kind of understand what's their purpose. They
Yes.
try to find that deeper sense of meaning to try to do their own startup, because that's the one that actually is going to carry you through during challenging times.
Yeah. That really kind of built your resilience, right? And really lets you keep going for sure.
Beyond purpose, I feel that a business exists to essentially make money,
Mhm.
right? In this capitalist society we live in.
Sure.
So it has to be able to have that market fit as well.
Mm.
So how would you guys go about doing your market research before starting something? Because you want to start a profitable company.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, I was really in the space where it hadn't really existed yet. So I was really one of the first few people to treat live streaming as a business in Singapore. There were live streamers way before me, for sure. Very grateful for them for kind of like laying the foundation, but I was really one of the first to kind of push live streaming to be an opportunity to market or to advertise. So I just had to look at what was currently existing. So like TSL, advertising agencies. So I just found things that I guess were similar, but I was wrong most of the time because I had no idea what I was looking for.
But when do you know that it's time to start monetizing your viewership?
When the numbers showed up. Was it like a
No, but
fixed
that's a fair
number?
point, really.
Or-
Like,
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's who willing to pay for your product, right?
Yeah.
And like, I think I imagine when you did your first sale or somebody who supported you, so
My first
happy.
subscriber.
Yeah, subscriber, right?
Yes.
You'll be so happy, and you probably still remember it
Yeah.
today, right? So,
What is your first subscriber's name?
This was probably my ex-boyfriend.
Oh.
So thanks. No, but yeah, I did remember. And when the first real subscriber happened was not someone who knew me, but someone who saw my content and really related to it and enjoyed the content. When they subscribed, I was genuinely confused because I started streaming purely for fun. And all of a sudden, there was this opportunity to turn it into a business. Suddenly, I was making money, and I felt like I had a strong purpose as well. So it was a whole journey, questioning myself, asking myself, do I want to step into this industry? Like, why do I want to do this? So everything of what you both just said is just questions I kept asking myself.
I think the first year is super important because it's really the market validation, right? It lets you know that people are willing to pay for the product. So the moment when TSL got its first client, that's the moment where we started opening up an office.
So who's your first client? Do you remember? Since you asked her to subscribe.
I think you remember it was a PR company.
I think those are the moments that you will not forget as an entrepreneur. It's one of those like key marquee moments that you say, look, I've got something here. The question mark is also, how can you go from 1 client to 10 clients to 100 clients and try to build that up to $1 million business? So I think that's also another question mark of how scalable that market is.
Yeah.
Not just proving that there's a market, but there's actually a lot of people willing to pay for that market.
Yeah, but there are two ways to look at it, right? When I was in management consulting, there's a very structured approach to seeing whether you can scale, right? You're looking at metrics like compound annual growth rate, you're looking at, and then you do market sizing, or a top-down, bottom-up approach. Everything is very numerical, very metrics-driven, done by researchers, done by the big three management consulting firms, and that's where you know that you are maybe riding the right trends, whether the market is growing and suitable for you. But then at the same time, if you are an early mover or even the first mover in a certain market, you don't even know whether there's a market size or appetite for it yet. And you just go out and foray for your first paying customer. Like back then, who knew that streaming or subscription services or even media or streaming companies could a live streaming would be a business, right?
Yeah.
And that's where maybe no historical data can back you and say that, okay, there is appetite for this, and you just go and try.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't know whether what you are putting out on the table is what people want.
And then look, how many of these management consultants are really entrepreneurs?
Yeah, and how many stories have you heard of people getting it completely wrong? Like Blockbuster, for example, rejecting Netflix.
Yes.
Like Kodak refusing to adapt to digital cameras.
Yeah. So sometimes the consumers don't even know that they need this product, right?
You don't even know.
And how can the consultants or some market research prove that? So sometimes it's really just gut instinct, and you've got to kind of just hang in there,
Yeah, I love it when Henry Ford said, and I could be altering this a bit based on my memory, right? He was saying that if you ask people, right, when they were still riding horses as the main mode of transport, what they want, they will probably tell you more horses or maximum a bicycle, very, very manual mode of transport. They wouldn't be able to tell you a car because it really takes a visionary.
They probably couldn't even visualize what a car.
Yeah,
looks like.
what is a car, right? Your customer wouldn't know that. So sometimes it really has to come from yourself and taking that risk. Or even Steve Jobs with iPhone, right? Your customers would never have imagined a phone which is just screen without buttons.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we're going back to horses these days, sustainability, right?
Oh, yeah. It's reversing back to horses. That's true. That's true.
Going back to your point at, the metrics which VCs focus on, right? Does this mean that, is that one of the reasons why VCs tend to miss huge opportunities because they just want to operate in a very safe space, which is proven because in the end, they need to get some certain ROI back to the investors?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think to a certain extent, yes, especially those VCs that have not built something on their own, right? So people coming out of consultancy, coming out of finance background, who have never knew really what is it like to go against the odds, as we talked about, or to try to create a market where the consumers don't even know that there is one. So I think to some extent, yes, in terms of the earlier stage VCs, a lot of them are looking at founders, and that's also requiring an experience of whether or not you have built a business yourself. Because it's always easy to tell someone to kind of build that business plan and to execute the business plan, but have you done it yourself? Question mark. So to a large extent, yeah, I think VCs have missed quite a fair bit of big opportunities. For those that spray and pray, they do 500, obviously they'll get something, right?
Do you guys feel that entrepreneurs should have a very clear vision when they start a business? Or should they be like, just get started first and wing it along the way?
For me, I am obviously not the first option. I just kind of stumbled into it and then just figured it out along the way. And I think it takes a certain kind of person to really wake up in the morning one day and be like, I want to make this thing, or I want to do this thing, especially if it hasn't existed yet. To really be like that kind of extreme visionary, like they're probably wired a little bit differently, to be honest, based on my experience meeting some of them as well. But for me, as someone who just kind of found an interest and decided to pursue it to become a business, there was a lot of iteration along the way. There was a lot of times I thought, this was the direction that I should go in. And a couple of months later, I was like, you know what, this was a good run, but I don't think this is what the company should be focused on. We'll try something else. And that's always kind of been my mentality towards
more dynamic.
Yeah, towards business. Yeah. So I'll try everything within my industry of live streaming and we'll try all of it out and we'll see what sticks and what doesn't. And whatever doesn't, we iterate or we just end it and it's okay. Doesn't mean that it's wrong or right. But businesses, we have to learn along the way, especially in a new industry.
Interesting fact. Nokia used to be a paper manufacturer.
Wait, really?
Samsung used to be transporting dried fish.
Huh?
And Instagram
Wait.
used to be a check-in app.
A check-in app.
Yes.
Like to check what?
Check-in as in like a location,
at a bar or something
Yeah.
like
Like Foursquare?
Yeah, a bit like that. So how different are they now?
But my take is quite different though. I feel that like sometimes you cannot afford to not be clear about your vision.
Okay.
Like if you are not clear about what you want, especially now when there's so much noise and people are just jumping on like buzzword. Say example, I want to build like the next amazing consumer app, right? And if I'm not very clear about what problem I want to solve at the very start, I'm just going to be very easily swayed by the next hype train. Example, I would have done Web3 last year, I would have done generative AI this year, and then you just keep like going left, right, and you never get to the end goal and your journey just gets much slower. And I think it's okay if you're going very lean or if it actually makes sense for whatever you're trying to solve. But especially if you're burning a lot of money every month and you're not very clear about what you're trying to solve, you're just going to burn so much funding for a much longer journey.
We call this, I think, like shiny new object syndrome. So it's like, what's this new shiny object? Oh, Web3, let me do this. And the result is the company becomes very directionless and
You have to be very rooted
very confused.
Yeah, very, very focused about what you want to solve in the first place, right?
But I think on the flip side is pivots, right? Like how important
That's
are
true.
pivots to businesses? Because if you see that it's, you're not getting anywhere, how do you decide when to pivot?
So maybe the focus, right, shouldn't be so much on the solution because that is always changing and iterating, but more so you must be hyper-focused about the problem you want to solve. And whatever it takes, right, whether it's Web3 or AI or whatever solution, it's just a means to an end to solve that problem. But the focus should be on the power itself.
Sure. So that's the core. That's your North Star, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
Good point.
So now that you already know what you want to solve, how do you get your first funding?
I think the lowest risk way to do it is to fund it on your own, which means that you either need prior work experience, have saved up some money, and that way it makes you also fully commit, to whatever you're doing. The other is, I guess, to play the friend and relative card. Hopefully you build up a decent track record with your friends and families.
3S, right? It was friends, family, foes.
Oh, raising money from foes, okay. And yeah, hopefully they would be convinced. So that's where, just now we talked about jack of all trades. This is where the skill of persuasion comes in very importantly, right? If you do not have that persuasion skill, you're not going to convince them. Yeah, but essentially, I bootstrapped TSL. It was basically, I got the money from another company, and I got the money from that company from another company.
Wait, what's going on?
Well, what do you mean by
The row of successes.
Well, it was small businesses which became pivots because TSL at one point was a side hustle of my other company.
Interesting. You not know that?
Yeah.
The people always
Today,
say that the best money is your customers' money, right? So I have friends who started companies where they always start with the revenue generating things first. So I give an example. A friend of mine, Karen, he started a Web3 company. He first started his company by doing community management services for other NFT projects. And then he charged like service-based money first. So his first 100 grand comes from a service-based business that can bring in revenue. And that funded his main business, which is kind of like a Chrome plugin Web3 tool of some sort. So he always wanted to do things that are revenue generating first. I mean, just earning customers money, right? Before diluting yourself to funding, because that kind of proves some value that maybe you are really good at execution. And then when you raise further funds, at least people are convicted that like you have what it takes to actually bring in revenue.
Yeah,
Which I thought was
how
quite
do you fund your operations? How do you all start?
Well, the boring answer is that I used to, work, right? I used to build startups before I did became a full-time streamer. I had worked many different freelance jobs in videography, producing, before I even ended up doing live streaming. And there was a lot of misconception among the live streamers. They looked at me and they were like, "Oh, she's a full-time live streamer. I'm gonna be a full-time live streamer." But what they didn't realize was that I already kind of had this pool of money that I was saving and earning. That's why I could invest so much at the start, to either host events or like do big giveaways, and that all was funded from me and my prior jobs.
Because at the start, you might not have a very predictable income, right? Also.
Yeah, and then you have to be realistic about it, especially in the social media content creation space. You really don't know when you're going to get any money in at all. So I just really wanted to ensure that I kind of had that safe amount. And I told myself, okay, I can spend this much on the ideas that I want to explore and to really push the business forward at that time. But if I run out of this money and I can't seem to get any more, then this is not working out. Thankfully, the money kept coming in, and that was like a very happy cycle.
Yeah, but it's very inspiring, right? It shows that anybody can start somewhere.
For sure.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to work a few years first to get
Yeah.
fresh lunch.
Yeah. And then Brian said side hustle became his main thing.
I think if you don't know what you want to do yet, but maybe you have some dream of starting your own company one day, it's good to just start working at one of these companies or working at many different companies, be it when you're a student doing an internship, right? Just try to get that experience out there, right? Experience from all different areas, and then you might find something that you enjoy doing, right? There's this famous story on how Steve Jobs, right? Basically, he went to India, right, on a gap year or whatever, and then he found out calligraphy. And that's why aesthetics became very important, and all the fonts that you use became very important in Mac computers. So it's drawing from that life experience and then turning that into, okay, now I know what I want to do in my business.
Every experience matters.
So what do you guys think stops most people from starting their own business?
I think it's the fear of failure, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like getting judged.
I speak to a lot of younger people, and a lot of them have a desire, or they come up to me and they tell me like, I want to do my own thing too. And I'm like, okay, have you started? They're like, no. I'm like, why? Oh, no time, no money, and and I understand, I'm not shaming them for that, but I think what people don't realize is that all of us have the exact same fear and uncertainty and anxiety in building something, but we just chose to take that step, not knowing what the result might look like.
It's really whether your desire eclipses your fear of failure, right?
Yeah. So I always try to push people. Just be like, give yourself a time frame. Maybe just try it out for 3 months. Invest a certain amount of money into it. That it's either money you've earned for yourself, or if you ask from someone, then make sure you give it back. And within those 3 months, if you see that progress, then you're doing something good. And if you feel like nothing's really progressing forward, maybe it's the idea that's not strong enough, or maybe you are interested in entrepreneurship, but maybe your role is not to be the one that builds that company.
I think another way to confront that fear is to speak to people who have gone down that path, and learn from them and understand where are the pitfalls. So I think a big part of what we're trying to do at Hatch and Hustle is to build that community, right?
Yep.
So people can lean in, people can support each other. So I think being able to do that, you talked about limiting the risk, setting aside some time and money.
Yeah.
And then also I think in terms of having different scenarios played out. So what's the best case scenario, what's the base case, and what's the worst case? So I think all of those will help to confront your fears.
Sure.
I think a lot of people are also waiting for the right time, the perfect time to go and start a business.
Is there a perfect time?
Or they might also feel that, okay, I want my first company to be my dream company.
Yeah.
And my advice would be, don't start with that expectation. Your first company is probably not going to work and you're probably going to pivot, and that's okay, right? I also feel that people should be biased towards taking action. So whenever they're confronted with uncertainty, because there's always uncertainty in everything that you
For
do,
sure.
just start doing it first. I mean, make sure you do some market research and you have a North Star. But after that, you should really just get started, and after that, you can iterate from there. A lot of people just don't ever start, I feel.
I know people who had, like PowerPoint presentations of market research, competitors, and all, they even find like, suppliers and stuff like that, but they just never move forward with it. And I just feels kind of sad.
The first few steps are the hardest.
It is,
for
it is.
sure. Yeah, but I think for some people also it's the opportunity cost, right? If you are working at a high-paying job already, very comfortable, expat package, or if you have kids and their tuition fees and college fees to pay for, it must be very, very challenging. And these are people that it really takes more conviction in something that you really want to do to overcome all that fear of losing and sacrificing all this opportunity cost of a high-paying job to start something.
I guess if you are maybe at that life stage where we have a certain amount of obligations already, you have to think of it as it's quite impossible to go and start a company from fresh, from the start and leave your job. But think of it more towards, can you do it on the side first? And
once that proves enough traction, you can leave your job comfortably.
Can I share a story?
Go for it.
And then we can decide if we want it in or not. But no, but I'll keep it brief. But I've always seen my dad as someone who's very entrepreneurial. He's always been the one with that business brain for the longest time, but he was working for other people for majority of his life. And a couple of years back, he actually did a really major surgery. It's like a life or death kind of surgery. And it was so interesting because he met his old friend, and while he was lying on the hospital bed, they came up with a business idea. And my dad was like, I want to try this out. And my dad's traditional old man, kind of like stable income, don't take risk, come home by 10 p.m. Still today, still come home. But he did that, and he's been doing that business for 3 years. And it pains me to think that some people need to wait for a life or death thing to happen to them before they make that step. So hopefully more people allow themselves to take that chance, because the biggest risk you take in starting a company is you just close it down and you move on to the next thing, and you can move on to the next thing.
I think the story with your father, I think it stems from fear, right? He's afraid of losing, right? Essentially, if he stops this is what's going to happen to everything else. But when that fear portion was removed, right? Because there's nothing else to lose anymore. That's when essentially, right? I don't know if I read it correctly.
No, it's true.
That's when essentially he got the courage to go and do something like that. Yeah.
But sometimes you kind of waited too long. Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you just gotta just go for the jump.
But what do you think of, say, founders starting a business, but they come from very well-to-do families, they have a lot of resources, and they're very, very comfortable? Do you think that because they have, they are not at a nothing to lose kind of phase, it makes them less of a founder, or you think it doesn't matter at all?
I think it just makes them extra blessed. They can just do so much.
That's right.
They have that resources, that opportunity, that platform. Use it, and maybe help some other people who don't have those resources along the way.
That said, I think the challenges are still
Yes,
similar.
still the same.
Yeah,
But
still
do you
gotta
think that, founders without that safety net are like, okay, this business has to work out, will try extra hard?
In fact, I think if everything is on the line, you give it more, right? Like, this is make it or break it. So I think actually I feel that these founders have a special desire to prove people wrong, to work extra hard, and to get success.
I think founders from a good, wealthy family background, they have a tremendous amount of privilege. They get a huge advantage against everybody else because the finance is resolved immediately. I know business owners who are like that, but they are also extremely driven as well.
The motivation comes from elsewhere besides financial upside. It will be other reasons and purpose, right?
It might be from wanting to make a name for themselves, not always wanting to know that I'm this person's son.
Yeah, or continuing the family tradition and that's.
I mean, I feel like survival is still the biggest kicker here.
Yeah,
personally.
But I also know some people who are from rich families, right? And my mindset's completely different. They're just waiting for the inheritance. They're just chilling their life away. So it depends so much on the mindset that they have.
So speaking of fear and trying to confront fear, how did you guys confront your own individual demons?
I feel it's best to just not overthink, because we tend to get in the habit of thinking what could go wrong when we start to overthink. Just being biased towards action. And when you're biased towards action, what happens is you actually gather more data, because everything first is just theoretical, right? But when you start doing things, you see how the market reacts. And that's data which you will never get if you're in the theoretical phase. So you can think of it actually, even though you are now actually started, you got started, you are really doing more market research and you're learning and iterating along the way.
I think when I first started the fashion subscription startup after JC and before university, my biggest fear was actually letting down people, like mentors who have helped me, people who have supported me and collaborated with me or like make introductions for me. I think that was the biggest fear for me. Is like, I would say it's like image, right? And your reputation, and also like living up to expectations that people set upon you. But at the same time, I think overcoming that fear comes from that, okay, if this doesn't work out, I'll just take it as a very expensive tuition for your own personal growth. And then I'm just going to make the next big thing that's going to, I guess, live up to my own dreams and also to other people's expectation. It's not like a one-hit wonder thing. So I think that is my biggest fear like then, and that is also my biggest fear now, even if I'm not in the seat of an entrepreneur right now. And I think it just stems from is everything that I'm doing right now going to help me grow as a better person? And that's going to be enough to overcome this fear.
Yeah. I think there is always a lot of fear in starting things, but my fear of not having tried always kind of overwhelms and takes over all of that other little concerns and anxieties that I have when I do things, because I want to be able to say that I have lived my life and that I had tried. And even if it failed, at least I gave it a go, and I know I did my best at it. And that always motivates me to make those little steps to do it. And I used to look at uncertainty in a really negative way, but in the more recent years, I try to look at uncertainty as like an exciting thing. It's like, you just don't know what's coming next, and that's a good thing. Like, anything can happen rather than anything can happen. It's like a little change in like your perspective and your tone actually really gives you a very different outlook of life. So that's how I go.
No, for me, I take baby steps, right? So I started working in a very global and very huge investment bank. Then I started moving to a mid-sized VC fund. Then I became a partner in a VC fund. So I think, being able to take a gradual step, sometimes if you don't want to take a few big steps, you can always break it down into bite size and you can manage it, because it gives you confidence. So actually, it's not that bad working for a mid-sized firm. Oh, actually, I can do my own thing. I know how to do it already.
Right.
So I think having that baby step, edging towards that, could help us.
Yeah.
So maybe there's like a systematic approach to overcoming fear.
There is.
You want to do something in a certain field, maybe get a job at a company in that field, which is doing well. Make sure you do well in that job, develop a side hustle, and then slowly baby steps one at a time.
Solid point.
And keep all their clients.
Conflict of interest.
So we talk about the benefits of starting our own company, freedom, and also achieving our purpose. But I'm sure there are a lot of downsides, of course, that people should be aware of before you even make the first move, right? So let's go into reality check. what are some of the risks or challenges of being your own boss versus working for somebody else?
Well, long story, but I'll take a step at this. When I was working in a bank, I was very focused in just self-improvement, trying to work as hard as I can, be able to improve my technical skills, my financial modeling skills. But then after which, if I think about moving into a partner role, I think that there are many other stakeholders. So for example, how your employees doing, how are your clients doing, how are your corporate partners doing, how your portfolio companies doing. So in terms of being putting people's interests first, I definitely had to kind of switch that kind of mindset from putting myself first all the time, trying to garner for that promotion or that bonus, and just think about how's everyone faring.
When I made that switch from working for someone and then becoming my own boss, it was a little bit jarring because when you are working for someone, to a certain extent, you're always kind of cushioned. Because if you really are really lost and a little bit directionless, there's always your boss or your upper management who's going to kind of guide you to remember where you need to go. But when you are your own boss and you do things by yourself, if you're lost, too bad. On your own. You kind of have to process that by yourself. It's not something where you can go up to your employees or to your team and to be like, hey, I don't know what's happening for the next 6 months. I think they'd be kind of scared. So that transition was quite challenging for me actually. And it really does take a whole other set of skills to become your own boss.
Yeah, I say you have to be extremely resourceful because if you're not an extremely resourceful person, then you're just going to be stuck. You feel a lot of stagnancy. I feel that you do already find yourself being stagnant when you're working for a company. That's not going to change when you become an entrepreneur because I feel so much of an individual's growth is very dependent on the individual itself. And you have to operate in a different mindset.
I agree. Like one of the downsides of being your own boss is that your only learning channel is from your own mistakes and your own journey. But working for somebody else, your path can be accelerated by learning from a mentor or a boss who's willing to teach you, coach you, share his mistakes before, and help you skip that hurdle. But of course, being your own boss, if you really know how to do a lot of reflection and look back and see how you can work things forward, you can also accelerate your own growth. So it really depends on how you extract the most learning out of everywhere you go.
So what can we expect when we move into our first few years of starting our company?
I think the first years are 100% the hardest years because you don't even know whether your company will be around in a few years' time or even next month.
I feel you, Brian. It's a lot of rejection.
Yeah.
All the time, man. And I think you shouldn't be worried it's just you. Any businesses, any entrepreneur, first time, they get rejection on. So it's not a reflection of your self-worth, neither is it a reflection of the quality of your business. It's just that you're unproven, right? And when people are unproven, you just say, okay, let me just wait and see.
Yeah.
So that's part of that. And, being able to handle that rejection and come back stronger, I think
really
it's important.
Yeah. I remember the first 2 years of building my business and live streaming was all about consistency. There were some days where I just felt like maybe this is not a business that's going to last the test of time. And I just kept telling myself, okay, you know what? Even though I'm a little bit more tired today, I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm just going to make sure that I keep pushing through, creating the things that I have to make sure that this business is either being seen. I organize a lot of meetings with clients to educate them on what streaming is about, to just making sure that I put that best foot forward. It's really, really important in that first couple of years, because if you're not consistent and you're not disciplined and you allow that, exhaustion kind of get to you, it can really make or break your business.
I expect being very tired for the first 3 years.
Yeah. I literally just took my first holiday last week after 3 years. Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah.
My goodness.
It was my decision. Just making it clear.
But is the startup culture always like that? When you start a new company, is it always is hustling always going to be like this?
We gave the same face of I think it's possible to have work-life balance. I really do. I think it really depends on what you want to achieve for yourself. I think for me, when I started, I was aiming for like the stars. To be very honest with you, I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be, as good as I can be. And that meant having to give up a lot of my personal time to invest in being better quicker. But that's not necessarily for everyone. And not everyone needs to choose that lifestyle. You can, really have a proper balance. To me, it depends on individual people. And I can last a bit longer without
Let me phrase that question in a different way.
Okay.
If there was work-life balance, a very healthy work-life balance, do you think you have succeeded?
Oh, good question.
That's such a hard question.
No, I think it's very tough, to be honest. Like, as much as you want to kind of carve out time for your family, your friends, and even for yourself, but you could be having dinner with your friends and you're still thinking about the business. Right?
Not present.
Not present, you're right. So I think in terms of, you can carve out time, but it's very tough to take your mind and switch off and go into those meetings.
It's like having a baby.
Yeah, good point.
Baby, right? So
Yeah.
when you're out with friends, with boys, you're still thinking about your baby at home, and like you look at the baby cam and be like, oh, it moved a little bit. Like to me, I kind of view a business very similar to that.
Yeah.
It is possible, and we should encourage full work-life balance. Like we shouldn't be promoting like
Yeah.
that's not what you're here to do. But at least in our experiences, or in my experience, it has been quite challenging at the start.
But there's this whole mindset that the more hours you clock, you're like this hustle mentality makes you more of an entrepreneur. Like you're a harder worker, and like your investors will be happy, employees, customers will be happy. Do you think it's like too cliche, and do you think it should be encouraged or discouraged?
That's very interesting. I've actually never associated how well a business goes on like hours.
Well, in anyways business school, right? A lot of us have like side hustles, right? Whether it's like say running a tuition center or insurance, our own startup. Like the people that I hung out with, especially from business school or NUS Entrepreneurship Society, which I was part of previously. Like we always go to school and we'll compare like, wow, I slept 2 hours yesterday. And wow, I never hear. There's actually a flex, among our friends that like the less you sleep, people will be like, wow, you're so hardworking, you're so driven, and like. Yeah, it was really a flex thing when, especially I was in year 1, year 2, year 3, we compare how little we slept. And then there will always be like this mindset of like choosing between sleep, social life, and studies or something like that.
It's like this triangle, right?
All three, you have to pick toward the S. It was like you are a harder worker and you are likely going to be more successful. It's kind of like correlated in some sense. But of course, after a while, like we know that it's not sustainable because of burnouts. That's going to put you down in unproductive mode for a much longer time, right? Than if you paced yourself. When I was younger, I thought it was also very cool to like do all-nighters, burn midnight oil to achieve maximum results. But at the end of the day, like I realized the correlation is kind of like arbitrary.
Yeah, that's so interesting. No, not cool. Not cool.
I always thought it was a commentator. I didn't know that.
I do feel very strongly about this. Right? I think we shouldn't glorify. I don't think it's a badge of honor. It's a lot of hard work to get success, period. But it's not like, oh, I sleep 2 hours, how many hours? No, I don't think it's about that, right? Right? What do you think, man?
I think 2 hours is a bit extreme. I would not call that.
You wouldn't even the next day.
Hey, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, but when we're all 18, 19, year 1, year 2, uni kids, we can go on and on, like on like 2-3 hours of sleep. But of course now, like no chance. Like you can't even do math anymore the next day.
But I do agree that what you get out is what you put in as well, right? So I do not feel that you should expect to have the same amount of work-life balance that you had in a salary job.
Yes.
Because it's going to be very different. You're going to be thinking of work even when you have a baby at home. That is always going to be constantly on your mind. And you would be working more than, I would say, a normal salary job, right? Because you're starting at a huge disadvantage. You're starting something new. You're competing against established players already in the space. And so you have to put some sort of actual work because that would translate to actual output, but you don't do it to the point where it's detrimental to your health, detrimental to your relationships, and so on. But I say you definitely have to work harder.
So we all know that the failure rate for most startups is at least 90%. And I think even from an investor lens, they say only 1 out of 20 portfolio companies will succeed. So that's even less than 10% chance of success. So why do you think some of these startups fail? Or what are some of the more common reasons actually?
I think three main things. Number one, you are not providing value to the market. I think Brian talked about it a lot, and I'm going to echo on that. Sometimes, it's easy to drink your own Kool-Aid and, not being able to reflect and, building something that the market really don't need. That's one. I think number two is with regards to team. Are you be able to build a superstar team? Are you able to motivate your team? How are you going to be a leader to that team? That's also a big question mark. Some people cannot rise to that challenge, and if you cannot build a team, there's no business to speak of. I think thirdly is running out of cash. A lot of times, we talked about funding just now, funding your own startups, but how good are you in your financial management? Do you know that you're running out of cash next month? How do you plan for 6 months ahead, 1 year ahead? So I think those are the three main things that usually why startups fail.
Yeah, I think it was interesting that we talked about, comparing how many hours you put into, your studies or sleep or whatever. Because if you have that mentality and be like, oh, I put 24 hours into my business today, and so did Brian, but Brian's way more successful in his business. That kind of mentality can actually really take you down a really unhealthy and wrong path and eventually to the demise of your company. So having that proper mentality is very, very important.
I would say at a very early stage, right, the fundamental of the business is the people. And few things, right? One is co-founders just can't get along. And I see that a lot. Even in the current company that I'm working for, one of the co-founders, or two co-founders, left last July. I mean, it wasn't a bad thing as well. The company became more streamlined afterwards. But like co-founders disagree all the time. So you start off as friends, start off a similar mission, but as you go along, I think people's ideas and values might have changed. So that's one of the biggest thing. I would say second thing could be also just not adapting fast enough to like changes in the market, right? For example, when I was doing Everywhere, which is this like fashion subscription thing, I think pre-COVID. And then when COVID hit, obviously nobody wanted to rent clothes anymore because how often do you go out, right? You don't need the things to wear to the office. And I was doing winter wear rental some more, and like there was no travel happening for like 2-3 years. So we didn't pivot enough to a retail model, or we didn't want to, especially because of this whole sustainability angle. And when we can't pivot enough such that our product market fit became entirely irrelevant, then obviously we lose out and people are not going to pay for what we initially produced. So I would say is like not being flexible and adaptable enough and fast enough to the market changes. And I think things are moving faster than ever before, right? Like the market has been more dynamic. Consumers change their behavior more quickly than before as well. If a company cannot keep up to speed and stay at the forefront of that, you're just going to be irrelevant the next day and that's it, you're done.
Why I think certain startups fail, I think one reason is the strategy is an issue. So for example, you can have a team which works super hard and hustles every day, sleeps 2 hours a day. But if they have the wrong strategy, no matter how hard they work, it's just going to turn out wrong. If they don't, if they are stubborn and insist on doing something in a certain way, but it's like the bad kind of stubborn, not the good kind of stubborn. They don't know how to course correct. Then eventually they're just going to be like Kodak, right? A blockbuster. I think the other big hurdle which a lot of these startups have is the people management aspect, because and a lot of people start companies, they're also very new as managers. And that's the thing with founders. They don't have I would say, it's not they've been like 20 years in management when you start a company.
They're probably only 20 years old.
Sometimes you have really young founders. And I myself was a very young founder who made a lot of mistakes when I started TSL. So if you're unable to learn from the mistakes and keep repeating them, I see that some companies are kind of stuck at like a 10 people or 20 people. Sometimes they want to be stuck and they don't want to grow. But sometimes they want to grow but they can't because it's a management issue. They haven't been able to systemize, create frameworks, designate work, or maybe have that interpersonal skills to take their company to the next level.
Not able to grow with the company as a founder themselves.
Yeah.
So Van, when you had Everywhere and when you tried it out and it didn't work out so well, do you feel like it impacted or affected you and how you proceeded in your future businesses?
Yes, for sure, like 100%. I would say I think I was always a very, very confident person coming from like, modeling, fashion, content creator background. So that self-confidence was always already pretty high. I think the first time when I started this new business at like 18, 19 and it failed during COVID, during the first year of COVID, I think it took a huge toll on like my self-belief and self-doubt. Like I always thought, wow, like a lot of people keep telling me, wow, you're gonna be a businesswoman one day, you're gonna like do really well one day. And the moment like I failed, I thought like, wow, I really just question everything that people say. Like all these compliments are very cheap. And I thought that I just didn't have the right skill sets. I was too young, too inexperienced to do something after that. So I think, and I think you really can't forgive yourself enough sometimes.
How do you bounce back?
Wow, I would say I didn't like bounce back like immediately. I went on to like do internships and work for other people. And I think I had many wins in those internships. So I proved myself and got some validation from my bosses and my colleagues. And I think that built my confidence and saying that, okay, I'm not completely useless and I'll be a failure in life kind of thing. But I think it's like getting more mini wins in another environment again would help. But I see people who probably failed their current business and start again, like a new venture altogether. And I really applaud that. I didn't have the courage to do that at a point in time, but I thought, okay, I was way too inexperienced and that's why I wanted to work for experienced bosses. Went to consulting, went to VC and learned from very experienced bosses. I thought that was what I needed in order to be more prepared when I start my next venture.
So when you experience failure, I think that you can take it in two ways. You can either get bitter about it or get better about it. So it's just the bitter or better, right? I feel that if you tend to externalize a lot of the problems and say, yeah, I feel because my co-founder was a jackass or whatever, then that's a way to easily get bitter about things. And sometimes people use this as a coping mechanism, right? Because they just
blame everything around
you. But you, right? That's the externalizing worldview. So, and there's a lot of tendency for that to happen. And this could be setbacks in any areas of your life, I've seen people who maybe were unsuccessful in dating when they say, all girls are terrible, all guys are bad. They would end up with remarks like this because they are just essentially getting bitter about things, right? I feel that in order to get better, you have to take a lot of accountability, right? And understand where you're inexperienced.
Be more reflective.
Be more effective, yeah. And then find out a path on how you can get better. And then that is exactly what you did. It chose the better path, right? And that's eventually what will lead you to becoming a better entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship is hard and there are times where you will fail, but when you fail, you just don't want to end up bitter and never try it again, right? You want to just give it another go, but with all the optimism that you had at the start.
Like a lot of people always say that like you can make mistakes, just make it fun, but don't make the same mistake twice.
I think all of us hear this phrase, fake it till you make it, so much. Like, what does that mean to you?
I think the fake it to make it culture is made worse by actually media and rockstar entrepreneurs, because you see them in the front of magazines, you see them partying with successful people, celebrities. So just a couple of years ago, I've invested in an e-commerce company. Two guys, they've closed their Series A round, $25 million, and they kind of celebrated party time, right? But the party lasted a bit longer than expected. So 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And they've been always sending me, say, hey, come to this party. So I was out of town one day. I was at Yes Island, Abu Dhabi. Wow. I went into this party. Essentially, it was a club. It was, a lot of people. And suddenly they had M&M coming in and rapping. And it's sponsored by the startup, mind you. Wow. So I rocked up to the founder. I said, hey, what's going on? And he said, I'm networking. I said, what the fuck? I mean, you're an e-commerce company, right? You're selling jeans and shirt to auntie and uncles. What are you networking with, right? So I think just this whole idea of you need to be with a certain bunch of people, you need to be partying, you need to see that where. That's really not good for the entrepreneur. I think a lot of this is the hustle and what you don't see behind the scenes. So I think the fake it to make it point of view, I'm not a big fan of that.
But on the flip side, there will be founders, especially the young ones with very little experience, who always feel the imposter syndrome when you are surrounded by a lot of experienced and seasoned entrepreneurs, right? And they have a lot to prove, and that's where you probably just have to give a facade that you're very confident about what you're doing until you think that you are like essentially that. But that's not so much of like scamming people and being something you're not, but that's like kind of like selling yourself, right? And selling the confidence and conviction that you have in the company, especially when you think that you're not so much there yet.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Bennett, but a lot of my early years was built on faking it till you make it. And I think it's because especially when I was in New York, being 20 years old, female, Asian, in in that kind of environment, you have to be able to sell yourself, or you have to be able to speak to people and have them believe you. They need to believe in what you're saying, even when you don't believe in it yourself. So I think it's faking it till you make it is great for really that initial stages, and for like internally for you to believe in yourself, you know, when you start, you know, repeating some of these things that you say. But yeah, I think when it gets to a certain point, like if I ever get $25 million, you know, would I bring, you know, I don't know if I would do that.
Please don't go party. That is fish.
But I actually understand where you're coming from at the early stages like that. When I first started the Angel Network, NUS Alumni Ventures with my friends, right? We haven't graduated yet. Most of us haven't graduated, the team. And we already went to networking events where people like Bennett will be around, already there, already partner level. We were just a bunch of kids trying to help build an angel network and help startups raise funds. And we really faked it to make it. Honestly, firstly, we're not sitting on ready capital to deploy. Secondly, like none of us are like even angel investors ourselves. Like, where did the money come from? Eventually, some of us started doing it. It was a lot of like going to people and saying, yeah, we help startups raise funds very, very confidently. Printed name cards for ourselves, have a very official email, nice websites and stuff. But there was also the journey where things were coming into pieces and the Lego bricks were being assembled. And eventually we did make it successful enough, and we actually did our first, like the Southeast Asia's first student and alumni run angel network. But at the start, when we were putting it into pieces, I think it was just selling that dream, right? So that other people can join on the boat. And if we weren't so confident about what we're doing, even though we haven't built whatever we wanted to like yet, we wouldn't have a team of 50 people operating alongside with us right now. Nobody would think that we're the best leaders to follow, right? And the angels would be like, you're just doing this at school project. But if we showed that conviction at the start that like, we're gonna make it, people would come along and join us on this journey.
Well, I think there's two ways of faking it to make it. You know, the ones that are trying to build your own self-confidence. The one that you are trying to be somebody else. I think don't go partying, please. Yeah, I mean, I got a strong view on this.
Well, like, yeah, in the Web3 space, it's especially common. Like, I know in Dubai last year, this company spent about 200M on like it's a $1 billion company, spent 200M on one weekend of like spotlight. Yeah.
1 weekend?
No, it's like they fly like all the celebrities coming in Dubai, but that's a Dubai culture, right? It's very, very flashy.
That's crazy, man.
I need to get in touch with some people in Dubai.
That's crazy, man.
So we spent a fair bit of time talking about the benefits and the upside of starting our own business, and also some of the challenges and risks, and also, you know, some of the downside and to our mental health when it comes to failures. So is entrepreneurship worth it, and why?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, man, I think it's super challenging. You know, it's really tough, but I assure you it's the most fulfilling experience one can get.
I think you learn so much and you grow so much as a person in ways that I don't think you can elsewhere. Again, it's like, why not? That is what I would ask.
I think the personal growth part you can't get it anywhere else than to take the risk and do your own thing. And also all the downsides that we talked about, right? All these can really be mitigated by really having a very good support system and being in like perhaps a founder community where you can share all these experiences and also speak to people when you're struggling. I think a lot of downside really can be cushioned if you really believe that entrepreneurship is something that you want to do.
I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs, whether they've succeeded or not. Just the very fact that they've attempted it, right? It's very positive green flag. Whenever I see a resume and someone has entrepreneurial experience, that is when they get a huge plus. So
those applying for bridal company, please at founder somehow in your CV.
So I think entrepreneurship can be a very rewarding experience, but I also want to maybe give a bit of dose of reality to say that it's not for everybody.
Yes.
You need to have a certain temperament, skill set, and so on to succeed and become successful. I think that's quite well survivorship bias over here. Yeah, but it does require a lot of hard work, but it can be extremely fulfilling.
Yeah. And I would also want to add that it's okay if you don't want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I think with every entrepreneur, we need people who are open to, you know, being part of a team, building someone else's idea together. Yeah. So if you are interested in entrepreneurship, you give yourself that time and runway to try it out. And if you feel like it's not something that you want to invest in, or maybe you just don't feel like it's something for you, all of the other routes are also very commendable and very respectful as
Fair
well.
point.
This was such a great discussion, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And if you did, don't forget to like, comment what you want to see next, and don't forget to hit subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.